Toxic people are never intimidated by your outrage. What actually terrifies them is your absolute indifference, because refusing to engage is the ultimate proof of self-mastery. It is the exact threshold where you opt out of their psychological theater. That is the point where genuine dominance begins. The authority that is born from having zero requirement to react. We exist in a hyper-vocal world. Everyone is desperate to validate their stance. Everyone demands an audience. Everyone fights to secure the final word. But the ancient practitioners of Stoicism recognized a truth that remains invisible to the masses. The more aggressive an individual's exterior noise, the more fractured their internal security. Marcus Aurelius famously noted that your authority extends over your own perspective, not over external conditions. Internalize this reality, and you will unlock unshakable fortitude. When that truth finally clicks, your entire reality evolves. No external force can manipulate you if you fundamentally decline to take the bait. Silence is not a vacuum. It is a dense, powerful presence. It is raw mindfulness. It is emotional intelligence applied in real time. And in this video, you are going to discover 7 silent postures that strike fear into the hearts of toxic personalities without you uttering a single syllable. Behavior 1. You register everything but validate nothing. The objective observer always holds the cards. Toxic individuals survive on feedback loops. They require noise, they need friction, they are hunting for your psychic energy. But when they collide with someone who merely watches without absorbing, their strategy falls apart. Your stillness turns into their disorientation. Where they anticipated a wildfire, you present them with an unmoving landscape, and that total composure unnerves them because it defies prediction. You diagnose their hidden agendas, their shift in tone, and their calculated traps, but you refuse to bite. You let them complete their performance, while you remain completely anchored. Silence isn't a white flag. It is a calculated tactical move. Every single time you maintain your composure instead of matching their vibration, you seize the steering wheel. Your refusal to speak forces them to sit alone with their own toxicity and internal chaos, and the more grounded you remain, the more irrelevant their turbulence becomes. The truly wise do not squander their words. They know that a counterattack only sustains the instigator. When you withhold your words, you cut off their oxygen. And in that exact second, the leverage migrates directly from their hands into yours. Behavior 2. You bypass the debate and withdraw your presence. Engaging in a verbal battle with someone who feeds on friction is identical to sitting down for a game of chess with an opponent who intentionally flips the table. You do not achieve victory by presenting a better argument. You achieve victory by protecting your own bandwidth. Seneca once observed that the most profound retaliation to hostility is restraint. That refusal to argue is not submissive, it is elite discipline. It is a definitive boundary that states you will no longer donate your sanity to people who profit off of disorder. The moment you quit the argument, their dynamic breaks. They lose their traction. They can no longer siphon off your emotional state. They are forced into a monologue, desperately trying to calculate what is happening behind your eyes. That is precisely where the power dynamic inverts. The less context you provide, the more they overplay their hand and expose their true nature. Your lack of friction becomes a transparent glass that reflects their pathology. You aren't retreating in fear. You are making a conscious executive decision not to let their psychological toxicity infect your ecosystem. The second you stop justifying your position, you strip away their leverage. You have no need to win the debate because you won the entire match the moment you turned around and walked away. Behavior 3. You choose physical and emotional distance over interpersonal drama. Toxic people require proximity to execute their manipulation. They need direct access to your emotional buttons to alter your perception. But the moment you establish distance, you disarm their primary weapon. Distance isn't a sign of petty coldness. It is an act of supreme clarity. It is the practice of stepping back far enough to view the entire blueprint of their behavior, like ascending a mountain peak. Once you are elevated above the clouds, you realize how localized and small the storm beneath you actually is. When you resign as a participant in their theater, you can no longer be blackmailed by it. Distance paralyzes psychological manipulators because they cannot manipulate an environment they cannot access. The reality is that a vast majority of battles do not require your participation, they simply require your exit. The Stoics identified this state as apatheia, not a state of empty numbness, but complete liberation from emotional servitude. It isn't about lacking empathy, it is about becoming emotionally bulletproof. And that is exactly what distance provides. It gives you back the autonomy to choose tranquility, even when chaos is demanding your attention. Behavior 4. You extend civility when they expect hostility. This is the absolute peak of psychological autonomy. Manipulative individuals want nothing more than for you to adopt their chaotic energy. They want to drag you down into the exact same vortex that is swallowing them alive. But when you respond with steady, intentional kindness, not out of gullibility, but out of absolute strength, they lose their footing entirely. Calm civility under total control is an offensive weapon of peace. Seneca noted that the enlightened mind remains untroubled because its internal stature is far greater than any external disrespect. When you can stay completely regulated in the presence of blatant disrespect, you highlight the absolute chaos of the other party. Your composure acts as a stadium spotlight that illuminates their internal panic, and it terrifies them because suddenly their behavior is exposed for everyone else to see. Choosing to be civil does not mean enduring mistreatment. It means you possess the inner strength to shield your peace of mind without sacrificing your character. You are no longer reacting out of instinctual rage. You are executing moves based on deep wisdom. That is true dominance, grace without requiring their authorization, and composure without a single trace of vulnerability. Behavior 5. You step aside and let time execute natural consequences. Toxic personalities operate on a short-term horizon. They demand instant reactions, immediate gratification, and immediate submission. But time is the ultimate equalizer. Those who navigate life through deceit and manipulation inevitably suffocate under the weight of their own web. You don't need to orchestrate a grand exposure. Their own compounding choices will handle that on your behalf. Life has a quiet, systematic way of balancing the ledger. The Stoics maintained that justice doesn't need to arrive with a loud explosion. Frequently, it is the silent process of watching pieces naturally fall where they belong. When you abandon the desire for personal retaliation, you break your contract with their narrative. You realize that your internal quiet is far too expensive to trade for the petty satisfaction of proving a point. So you step back and allow the natural laws of consequence to perform their function. Your responsibility is incredibly basic. Stay grounded, stay patient, and stay aligned with your values. Truth doesn't require a defense attorney. It simply requires patience. Behavior 6. You place a higher premium on your peace than on external validation. This is the exact coordinate where total independence is born. Almost all psychological manipulation relies on weaponized guilt. They try to make you feel defective for prioritizing your own well-being. They attempt to govern your choices by exploiting your natural desire to be understood and accepted. But the day you decide that your internal tranquility is vastly more critical than their approval, you become entirely untouchable. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for establishing a perimeter around your focus. And instantly, their leverage evaporates into thin air. Epictetus explicitly stated that if you desire to be invincible, you must stop fighting for things that fall entirely outside your sphere of control. The subjective opinions of other people are fundamentally outside your jurisdiction, and the precise moment you cease trying to manage or alter those opinions, you become unbendable. Toxic individuals lose 100% of their influence the second they realize you no longer require their stamp of approval. You begin operating based on a strict internal compass rather than external validation, and that paralyzes them. You cannot guilt-trip an individual who prioritizes peace over social permission. Silence in the face of critical attacks isn't a sign of defeat. It is the ultimate expression of security. It communicates a simple message: I am completely at peace with who I am. And that conviction is your ultimate fortress. Behavior 7. You leave them entirely in the dark about your transformation. One day, a sudden shift occurs deep within your mindset. No more knee-jerk reactions, no more exhaustive explanations, no more frantic self-justifications. You simply disengage, and that sudden immobility completely upends their world. Previously, they possessed a precise map of your vulnerabilities and knew exactly how to trigger you. Now, none of their mechanisms pull any weight. You have transformed into an unreadable enigma, and that mystery is terrifying to them. Your silence becomes your definitive boundary line. They can no longer predict your reactions, decipher your thoughts, or orchestrate your emotional state. You didn't become a cold or broken person. You became entirely sovereign. You simply revoked their citizenship in your emotional universe. And that is the absolute worst-case scenario for a psychological manipulator, losing all access to your cognitive space. Silence is the ultimate dialect of personal evolution. It is the precise way your character announces that it has outgrown the old paradigm. You don't need an apology, and you don't need artificial closure. You have already won the match entirely in secret. Toxic individuals aren't afraid of a confrontation. They are terrified of being ignored. Because when you refuse to react, they lose their entire audience. And without your reaction to validate them, their illusion of authority completely crumbles. Silence is never the absence of power. It is the most concentrated form of it. It is the shield that insulates your peace of mind and the mirror that reflects their internal decay. So the next time an individual attempts to disrupt your emotional state, anchor yourself in this truth. You do not need to engage in a screaming match to secure a victory. You win by maintaining absolute composure. You win by fundamentally refusing to be managed. You win when your silence echoes louder than all of their external noise combined. Silence isn't a vacant space. It is the exact lab where clarity matures. It is the sacred zone between external chaos and internal perspective. It is where your autonomy is restored and your power returns home to you. Remain composed, protect your privacy, and stay entirely unpredictable. If this insight resonated with your path, share in the comment section below which of these 7 silent strategies you are committed to developing within your own life. Like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Stoic Spring. Because the more intentionally you cultivate your internal sanctuary, the more your outer reality becomes a flawless reflection of clarity, endurance, and absolute emotional independence.